Thank you everyone for joining today for our webinar, A Crash Course in Website Accessibility. We are going to focus today on how we can prioritize inclusion in 2023. So to start, just a little bit of housekeeping as usual. Please do feel free to use the live transcription from Zoom. You'll be all receiving the slides and the recording after the session as well, and that recording will have closed captioning. And we encourage questions of all kinds. This is ideally a collaborative session. You might see some questions at the top of some slides later on as well. If you have any questions or answers at any point, please do feel free to pop it in the chat or in the Q&A section of Zoom as well. So today you have myself. So I am Kainas, I'm the account manager at Moncito, and I'm with Ada.
And I'm Ada. Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm the sales director here at Moncito.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for joining. So I'll just really quickly go into today's agenda. So we're going to start with what web accessibility is, some common web accessibility issues that we see, the web content accessibility guidelines, standards, and what we should be prioritizing for next year as well. And then of course, a Q&A session at the end. So please do feel free to ask any questions at any point and we'll get to them at the end. Cool, but first, we'll do a very quick pulse check. So we'll do a poll. It is poll time. Let's go. So this poll is around how the accessibility of your website has progressed in 2022 to get a better idea of how everyone's accessibility and digital accessibility has been going so far. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of people maybe haven't started yet, or we're going to meet the goals that we've set, which is really good to see. Yeah. Awesome. I'll give about 30 seconds for this as well to give everyone enough time.
Quite interesting to see the graphs moving a little bit here and there.
Yeah. I love seeing this.
Cool.
All right. It looks like most people are around, got about 37% that haven't quite started yet, and about 30% that haven't, or that we're trying to meet the goals that we've set, which is good to see that progress. And also really good to see a lot of people just starting out with their accessibility journey on digital.
Well, you still have a month to go. Today is the 1st of December, so still have a month to go to meet the goals that we set. Yes. Awesome.
Yeah, a pretty even split, but I think it's still, most people haven't quite started yet. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. That's why you're all here, I believe, for the crash course.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think we've got about 80% of participants reply. So thank you very much for that.
So we're going to start with what is web accessibility and why it should be a priority for our organization. So basically, obviously web accessibility is more than just digital. Just like a building, for instance, needs to be accessible with ramps and wider hallways, for example, to make it accessible for someone with a wheelchair, we also need to make sure our digital assets are accessible. So this includes pretty much anything on the website itself. And the reason that it is so important is because it really does impact more people than you think. Just a couple of fun statistics here. Did you know that 1 in 6 people in Australia have a disability? And it's of course not just people with disabilities as well. It can also be people with long-term health conditions that might impact how they navigate the world and how they navigate your website. So it's another 22% of people in Australia that have a long-term health condition without a disability.
Yeah, I'd also like to add that about a month ago, I did a webinar about specifically accessibility for Singapore, where we have at least a much smaller percentage, but still about 13% that are affected by disabilities, and most of them are over the age of 55 that may have some sort of long-term health condition as well that would affect their ability to visit particular websites.
It actually, of course, it's something that does benefit everyone to make sure that your website is accessible, not just people with disabilities, because accessibility can benefit as well anyone with a temporary disability. We can see an image to the right of the screen there of Jasmine, our head of marketing at Moncito, and she a couple of months ago had an eye infection actually. So she then had to use assistive technology to be able to navigate her daily life and to navigate work and websites and everything around that. Which gave her as well, again, a good understanding of what it's like to then navigate websites if you maybe have a temporary disability. It can also, of course, making sure your website is accessible will benefit anyone like from an aging population, search engines, and smart technology as well. We want to make sure that content is accessible via assistive technology. This can actually include, of course, screen readers, any text-to-speech, motion or eye tracking devices, screen magnification software. There's a whole variety of tools out there to help people navigate digital life. So we want to make sure our websites are friendly to any of these assistive technologies that are commonly used. And of course, why it should be a priority. And this is just a few reasons, of course. It can expand our reach. We want to make sure that you're reaching a wider target of your audience to come to your website and have a better user experience so that they can actually access the content, understand the content, whether it's a financial website and they need to understand their needs and such around that, or if it's a retail website and they need to navigate the website to understand what they need to buy. It creates a better user experience, it can improve your SEO, and of course, it makes your organization much more inclusive as well.
Thank you, Kainas, for giving us that introduction. And we're here to share some of the most common accessibility issues that we see come across and also their importance. And yeah, I'm going to walk you through some of them, and that way you'll know how to spot them and hopefully solve them in the month that we have left. Let's talk about color contrast. It's really important for us to see a particular text against a particular background color, and not always does that resonate with UX designers. They try to make the website as pretty as possible, and we try to appeal to millennials and Gen Z by adding these pastel colors, but it basically refers to the hue, the lightness, the saturation of the text, and the images that you place on your website, and also on what type of background. It can be so difficult for people who have color blindness to identify the colors on the website, as well as people with visual impairments. And I personally, myself, who has perfect vision, I would like to say, sometimes go on the website and it does look pretty and everything, but their fonts, their text against the background may not be as visible, which causes me to kind of either leave the website or try and really figure it out and stress my eyes to understand what's actually published there in terms of content. So what can we do, right? So don't assume that if you see like all these beautiful colors and that there is a good enough contrast for you that it directly immediately meets the requirements. There are some approved color combinations. If you are in doubt, obviously, if you're not quite sure, there's plenty of contrast checkers that you can check out. All you have to do is to basically copy and paste the code of your background and then also your text, the content or the text color. And I think it's always good to quickly check before for any of your important CTA buttons, any of the important navigation. And typically we're trying to highlight that as a point of conversion, or for someone to actually click on that particular button. So keep an eye for those color combinations. The second bit is called skip to content. Now, if we want to know, let's just say Australia had a wonderful win yesterday against Denmark, and you would want to know the highlights of that game for the World Cup. If you visit a particular news, let's say a news provider or a journal or anywhere where you can read any announcements, there's a lot of information on there. You can see where that article is. It could be at the top, it could be at the bottom, it could be in the middle, and you could click on it to kind of read a bit more about it. For someone who's visually disabled, they are not able to see where the article is. So they come to your website, and if you don't have that skipped content element, that's not there for them to quickly use their keyboards and find exactly what they're looking for, it will take them through everything. It will start reading out loud every single navigation bar, every single word, every single financial announcement, which they may not be necessarily interested in. And it's terrible for them to wait to actually find exactly what they need. So it would be great if we could all have a skip to content element on all of our pages, which allows people with disabilities to use their arrows on their keyboards and the navigation to quickly read through or maybe skip the tab that they're not interested in. So that's a second common accessibility issue that we could fix. Now let's talk about alt text. The alt text are the short descriptions of the images that we publish on our website. They not only the images, also all of your documents should have an alternate text description. And I think the biggest question that I always get is like, how long should they be? What should it look like? Should it just be a cat or a dog? What we're trying to say is that it should be as descriptive as possible. Don't try to write 300 words of the description. You can be creative, but at the same time, it needs to be as descriptive as possible so someone with a visual impairment can actually imagine what it looks like. And basically, we're translating the image here for them. This is really helpful for people who use screen readers, because if you don't have any, then basically it reads out loud any gibberish. I mean, we all are guilty of saving an image as img3303.png 15300 by this many pixels. So that's what it basically will read out loud, and it doesn't tell us anything. So what we should do instead is to be short and concise. We want to make sure that there is a good balance between the image being informative but also descriptive. So that's kind of what we want to do. And for any decorative images, it is no longer needed to have an alt text. So if there's any decorative images, you can just leave the alt text null by basically putting some brackets in there. And here we have an image. Feel free for any suggested alt text in the chat. It can't just say a dog. It could say a dog licking its face. It's a brown and white dog. I'm not sure what breed it is. I think it's a golden retriever, but basically we want to be as descriptive as possible for that specific image and not just have any random gibberish in there.
Oh, I like that. Veronique has said golden retriever puppy licking its nose while sitting. We've got golden puppy sits on a cream colored carpet and it's licking its nose, and cute puppy sitting on carpet. I agree. It's a very, very cute puppy.
Yeah, those are really good descriptions, by the way.
Excellent. Definitely better than either dog or image underscore.
Yeah.
.jpeg 3000 pixels.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, forums. Let's talk about forums. They are pretty much on every single website, whether they're there to exist for us regular people to complain about something or for us to buy something and order something online. They are there for us to find more information about your business, about your agency, to ask questions, or potentially for us to leave our details behind so that you can contact us. So they are very notorious for not being accessible, and that's because we treat them just like as any other content piece or any other type of content that we publish on the website. So every of these forms, they have fields. They have specific requirements of what needs to be filled in what order it needs to be filled in. Sometimes we have a flow, a particular flow and a user journey where you can't do the third field without actually typing in the second field. So there's multiple combinations around that. So they need to be tagged correctly. Just like an alt text, we would have to have a field. We'd have indication that there is a field there that needs to be filled in, that the minimum password requirement is 5 characters, 1 capital letter, and a special character. So we would like to have those fields marked, but also it needs to be marked with an accessible color. So we obviously want to make the distinction between green and red, red being, well, it's not being filled in or it's missing. And the third step is the CAPTCHA. I mean, how many times do we have to, find buses or traffic lights on a particular grid? So if that is not accessible, how would you expect a person with visual impairments to actually go and click on all of the traffic lights? So this is very important, because at the end of the day, maybe not all of you here have a KPI for conversions, but for any type of business, whether it's a government agency or anyone in e-commerce or anyone in corporate energy, we would like these to come through, right? So we would like the forms to come through, whether that's feedback or whether that's an order or anything else. So what we should do instead, we should work with our developers on making these forms accessible and make sure that we tag everything accordingly. We should use specific symbols to mark any required fields, things like email address, or whether it's a password that doesn't match your specific requirements. And instead of maybe doing the CAPTCHAs, we could use some other security measures. I know this might be a bit difficult for you to change your entire process, but if you're specifically working maybe in NDIS or non-for-profit, this is a really good chance for you to kind of go and use other security measures such as logic or math tests, or maybe like phone verification, or maybe voice verification, where you could just, similar to the ATO, where we say, this is my voice and my voice identifies me in Australia, something like that, where we could use possibly the voice instead of going through a CAPTCHA, which is generated dynamically every single time.
Cool. Thank you, Ada. Another very common issue that we do find and that we do come across is text that isn't meaningful when read out of context. This is one of the accessibility checks that a lot of people maybe don't quite understand at first, but this is kind of a bit of a walkthrough into what that means. So essentially, we don't want to use generic phrases like read more, learn more, click here, and have that be the entirety of the text in the link itself. So a good example would be to just provide a little bit more context in that link. The reason for this, of course, is because anyone who is using skip to content, for example, or skim reading and tabbing through and using a screen reader, we want that screen reader to read the actual link of what is the link and where are they clicking, basically, rather than just saying click here. So for example, as a good example, it's to get started, we'd love for you to install the Moncito browser extension. Need help? Book a training session with us. So in this example, anyone knows if they are using a screen reader, the text will say, hey, this is a link, and it says to install the Moncito browser extension. And this other link says to book a training session. Whereas in the bad example, the screen reader will be reading out, this is a link, click here. This is a link, click here. And if we have too many of those together, it can get very clunky and very confusing about where people are clicking, where on the page they are, and also as well, where the links are actually leading them. And it might make them just choose not to actually proceed into the website. And then you might have some bounce rates and have some lower user experience. Cool. Thank you. Another common thing, of course, is captions for videos, webinars, virtual events, webinars, courses, anything like that, any training videos as well. So captions can make all the difference. And this can be in live events like this one, for instance, with live captioning, or even interpreters for live streamed events, or even in post-production, any web videos that are going out, any training videos that are out, any videos on your websites as well. You can work with automated captioning services. Do remember to proofread and verify the quality, just in case there are any typos, any spelling errors, especially with your own company's branding as well. And alternatively, you can provide a transcript with the video that's uploaded.
Thanks, Kindness. I just wanted to add something as well to where we in the beginning said that, accessibility is not necessarily there for people with disabilities. It could be just for anyone. I personally like to watch my TikTok videos and my Instagram reels with captions. I hate the sound. Sometimes it just comes through very loud. And before I even switch on the sound, I check the captions, and then I would be able to switch on the sound. But it makes my life easier as well to have captions, especially when English isn't my first language. I'm not sure if that's too much information, but English is not my first language. And for British English specifically, I find it really hard to understand. And even when I'm watching The Crown, I have to switch on the captions because half of the words I'm not even sure what they're saying. So it really helps me as well in my daily life. So that's what I just kind of wanted to go back to on captioning.
Oh, definitely. I can't tell you the number of times that I've been on the train, forgotten my headphones, and just been watching Instagram reels and TikToks with captions on.
Yeah. Awesome. Now let's get to the actual standards and standards. There's a lot of them that exist. We are not going to go through all of them, but if you have not heard from WCAG or WCAG, as some people may say, these are Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. That's an acronym for this. It's been developed by global organizations called W3C. They're the ones that are setting these regulations, basically. There are multiple versions that have emerged over the few years. Personally, I mean, we see most of our customers at Monsito, we have a lot of them aiming for the version 2.1 and AA compliance. For those teams that are very, very keen on hitting AAA compliance, that's really great. And it's a very long project to go through, but glad to see the commitment. There is a draft version of 2.2, which is being finalized, and we are expecting it to go live and well in the next quarter of 2023. So I think we should be able to have that version ready as well. There are 4 principles, so that's not a typo. There's actually 4 of them, but the first one is perceivable. So we're used to seeing an image, and just as I said, we know exactly what we're looking for once we see the Socceroos winning and passing through the round of 16 in the World Cup. But again, as we said, alt text with the images will help someone who have visual impairments to pretty much perceive the same thing as we would with our own vision. They need to be understandable. Basically, we have a certain understanding of where we can find certain links. Contact us would be in the bottom, privacy policy, terms and conditions, things like that. Reach out to us, or a chat box, which usually would open on the right-hand side, all the way at the bottom. But that doesn't mean that everyone else would be able to know this. And we're basically saying, don't place it anywhere else than where it should be, because we have that perception already, and it should be kind of in a standardized way. So try and use standard layouts and language wherever you can, so that it becomes understandable for everyone. We're using a mouse, we're using a keyboard, we're using our hands for scrolling on a tablet and mobile phone. But in theory, if someone has only not the right tools and only a screen reader to pretty much use that as a way to navigate a website, we should think of those as well, and we should make every element accessible and easily to navigate through. Otherwise, it's quite difficult for someone who's not able to use a mouse, who's not able to keyboard and their hands, to have the same sort of experience. And the 4th principle is it needs to be robust. Not everyone uses a desktop to access your website. We see more and more mobile and tablet use, especially through multiple analytics platforms, where we also want to make sure that it does look good on mobile devices, smartphones, and tablets. What you should be prioritizing, really, going in 2023 is, first of all, audit your website regularly. And by regularly, I don't mean once a year or twice a year. It means we should be doing that way more regularly and more proactive. And every website has accessibility issues. There's not one that wouldn't have any issues. It's a continuous project. It's not something you can do in a few months and then just leave it as it is. So before we start, though, think about whether you have to do it in terms of legislation, as in, do I have to comply with certain regulations? In the United States, in Europe, in Canada, it is pretty much a requirement. They face up huge legal actions. They get sued all the time, and that's why it's important. So it's mandatory. Here in Australia, there are the two groups of the government agencies that where we see a very, very good practice in getting accessible information to people with disabilities. The same in Singapore, for example, where every citizen deserves to have access to any changes in policies, to any changes in announcements, changes in the government, federal budget, things like that. There's also very traditionally document-heavy organizations where applications form exist, where other information exists, instead of them coming to a government office or any branches or customer service calls if it's not accessible. So we're trying to make sure that this the legislation part is covered. And there are those that kind of want to do better in terms of inclusivity, in terms of community. And if you're not necessarily regulated, we still want you to kind of think about what needs improvement, what is failing, what are you currently struggling with, and what can we do to help, basically. So we'll prioritize our web content. Obviously, there's just a few ways to prioritize all of your issues. It's not going to happen overnight, but we recommend that you start with your most visited pages, your most heavy traffic pages, because these are the ones that everyone will go to. That includes your homepage, some of your popular product and services pages, and make sure that you start with them, as well as your most downloaded PDF documents, because they may have forms to change your name, to change application, to change your address. These need to be absolutely addressed at first. And then the second one would be going after the low-hanging fruit. This could be all the simple tasks that we could get out of the way. And this project will take some help with content editors and also backend developers. So those tasks that can be done by the content teams, I encourage you to do them first, including adding alt text to every element, using elements like bold and emphasis, because we want, if anything is important and you have it in bold, the screen reader should pay attention to that and make sure that it also reads out loud, that it's an important sentence, there's a deadline, or there's important information, or there's a disclaimer. That's what we should be focusing on. And then we can tackle the more difficult and complex tasks. Obviously, we all need an accessibility champion. You may have one at your organization, you may not have one, but it's basically a resource, someone who's really passionate about this, someone who's either has someone in the family or someone as a colleague that has seen this go on a daily basis. But basically you want someone that will promote accessibility and stay on top of with legislation, make sure that they know what the challenges are and what we can improve, make sure that he or she is there to I guess could provide continuous training and keep people accountable for their KPIs, and make sure that basically it's there as a promoter of and a constant reminder of why we need to make sure that we make our website accessible. Always have a feedback loop. Just like a privacy statement, you should have an accessibility statement on your website, because even though you're working on accessibility, there will be still some complaints or feedback or improvements or recommendations from your visitors. That's why this statement is so important, because you're trying to say, we're doing our best. We're not perfect, but we are doing our best. And your recommendations are greatly appreciated, and we will work on it. So just like a privacy policy, it should be there. I think it's great as a way to be transparent with your community, to be transparent with your visitors, and allowing them to also help you in return. So that's a great way, and it's a great way to protect yourself as well from any complaints. And yeah, make sure that you have a feedback loop to be able to respond much more quicker to any recommendations. And speaking of feedback, we are very close to the end of this webinar or crash course. So yeah, Kainet, would you like to do another poll?
I would love to do another poll. It is poll time once again. So I'm just going to watch the poll now. We would love to hear your feedback as well. We'd love to help. So please do reach out and answer in the poll if you are interested in getting a free accessibility scan of your website, in seeing a demo of Monsito's accessibility module, to find out if your website is compliant against the guidelines, and or all of the above. We have actually seen a question pop up in the Q&A around a tool to audit their own website for WCAG. I would definitely recommend answering this poll and reaching out to us as well about that. I'm not sure who asked that question. It is an anonymous question at the moment.
Cool. Oh, there's the ability to leave anonymous questions.
Yeah. Awesome. Seeing the answers pop in. Looks like a lot of people are interested in all of the above, which is really good to see. You're all definitely in the right place then.
I see one of the questions that the tool that we can quickly check the color contrast. Well, this is presented by Monsito, so I'm just going to say Monsito. Our tool has a built-in color checker where we can use this. I believe we used to. I'm not sure if we still have a free one on our website, but I might do. I think we still do. I think if you visit our website, we have the ability to check your color contrast very quickly. But otherwise, more than happy to show you our color contrasting tool with Monsito. For the anonymous attendee who had a question 10 minutes in, do let us know. Tool to audit on the website for week. Again, I would suggest Monsito, but you can also go and check out some other ones. There's plenty out of them, but would be great. So anonymous attendee at 3:26 p.m. More than happy for you to have a look at Monsito. Then we have, when you have a large volume of images being pulled for external databases uploaded by third parties, the user system, do you have any recommended methods or strategies to ensure all these images are still accessible when they're published without a lot of time-consuming manual? Yes, so there is an ability for us to look at some internal images and external images that you use by third parties, whether you link to them. And the best way to do that is when we have the same image used across multiple pages, we don't want to fix it page by page. We want to fix it in one go. And if that image appears on multiple pages, we have the ability to actually just use it once and basically, copy and paste it across all the other pages. So there are some recommended methods we can suggest. So if you answer the poll, we can reach out to you and show you some of those images on how to make them accessible without actually going through one by one with the manual work. Are the same guidelines applicable to software solutions or just websites? Really good questions. These would be just websites. Mobile apps, I think it's still a lot in the works. There are some other solutions that can make the mobile apps accessible, including Uber Eats or Grab or any other apps that we have. Unfortunately, at Monsito, we only work with making the websites accessible. And then the last question is for the alt text. Let's say there's a lot of images on the website with no alt text. What would be the best and most efficient way to add an alt text? I've had a similar case come up with one of my customers. The best way to do that is with our tool, with Monsito, we're able to find all images where there's an empty alt text, because we're effectively scanning all your content with all the different elements. We can actually see all the images that don't have an alt text. And sometimes we even have, let's say you've taken over the website from another team and the alt text is just completely wrong. Let's just say someone just put dog, 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 dog everywhere, and you're not sure. We could also be able to pull out a list of all the images that have the alt text, where you can review them and then replace them with something else and more accurate and more descriptive. But as well as any empty alt text strings where nothing is available. So there's a few ways we could show that. So if you're also very keen, more than happy to set up a private session with you and show you that one.
We do have another question in the webinar
Mhm.
chat, which is if WCAG 2.2 is on track for Q1 next year, what is the timeline for 3.0? That is a very good question. Not fully certain. I think it's usually about a year later that the next one will come out, maybe a few years down the line. Ada, I'm not
Yeah,
sure if you know.
I think 2.2 was, I think for the first time we heard about it last year, and it's been in works all this year. So I think when they make the announcement, it takes at least 1 year to fully add all of the different additional compliance. So I'm expecting it to be early next year. So it takes them usually about a year to release a new version.
Yeah. So I would
Hope that
expect a
helped, Justin.
3.0 to come out maybe the year after, possibly 2024.
Yeah.
Cool. Please do ask any more questions if anyone has any more questions as well. You're welcome, Justin.
All right. Don't think we have any more questions, but feel free to reach out to us individually. There will be some a recording sent out to all of you. Feel free to share this with your teams. We do have some other resources, including an accessibility handbook. If you would like to have a physical one, feel free to let us know. We can ship this one to you. It's pretty cool. Or you can access our digital one, but we still have a few printed ones here in the office. And yeah, there will be some resources, including the color contrast checker and everything else. So more than happy to share those with you. For those of you that are still looking to improve your goals, you still have a month, and I hope today's session helped. Other than that, we're looking forward to potentially helping you in the next year. And yeah, thank you so much for joining, everyone. Have a
Thank
great
you,
day.
everyone.
Merry Christmas and happy holidays.